The strongest alloy in the galaxy snapped with a sound like a gunshot. Not metaphorically. Not poetically. It snapped. Every commander watching the live tactical feed from the frontier fortress above Carthos Prime leaned forward and asked the same question. What is she made of? The alloy was Vraxium 9, pride of the imperial foundries of the Zarenth Dominion. It armored dreadnoughts. It lined planetary shields. It held back singularities and laboratory accidents the Dominion never publicly admitted. And it had just been twisted apart by the bare hands of a human woman. The Dominion had expected surrender. They always expected surrender. When the Zarenth fleet translated into the Sol frontier, their diplomats delivered a standard message: comply, disarm, submit to administrative oversight. Humanity would be permitted to retain cultural autonomy so long as they provided raw materials and conscripts. Earth's reply had been short. No. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't dramatic. It was signed by a woman named Commander Alara Vance, retired orbital marine, newly appointed planetary defense minister. The Dominion high strategist had laughed. They are young, he'd said. Their species still measures time in centuries. They will break. So they demonstrated. They chose Carthos Prime, a human colony mining rare isotopes, and encased its capital in a Vraxium 9 containment lattice. An unbreakable cage from orbit to surface. The message was clear: kneel, or watch your people suffocate. The Dominion expected riots. Panic. Negotiation. Instead, they got silence. Then a single transport shuttle requested docking clearance at the fortress controlling the lattice. Unarmed. One life sign. Permission was granted, mostly out of curiosity. Commander Alara Vance stepped off the shuttle in plain black combat fatigues. No exosuit. No visible weapons. 53 years old. Gray threading through her hair. A face carved by war and bad decisions. The Zarenth admiral watching her approach the command deck felt something unfamiliar. Discomfort. You come alone? The admiral asked, towering over her with chitinous limbs and a voice like grinding metal. Yes, she said calmly. Figured I'd save time. You are here to negotiate surrender? She looked out the viewport at the planet below, her planet. Then back at him. No. I'm here to inspect your cage. There was scattered amusement among the alien officers. The admiral gestured to the viewport. Behold Vraxium 9. The strongest alloy ever forged. It holds stars apart. It will hold your colony until your leaders learn humility. Alara stepped closer to the transparent wall. Mind if I? She asked. The admiral flicked a limb dismissively. Touch it if you like. You will not scratch it. She didn't scratch it. She placed her palm against the inner reinforcement strut, a segment of Vraxium 9 forming part of the station's structural spine. There was no dramatic power surge. No glowing aura. No speech. Just a slow inhale. Then she squeezed. At first, nothing happened. Then a faint groan echoed through the deck. Zarenth officers looked around in confusion as microfracture alerts began blinking across their displays. That is impossible, one engineer whispered. The groan turned into a scream of tortured metal. Alara's muscles tightened under the fabric. Veins stood out along her forearm. Her jaw clenched. And the strongest alloy in the galaxy began to bend. Release it! The admiral roared. She twisted. The Vraxium 9 snapped. The sound cracked across the command deck like a rifle shot. Atmosphere vents screamed. Structural integrity alarms howled. Alara released the broken segment and let it clatter to the floor. Silence followed. Every Zarenth commander on every linked channel stared at the impossible image of their miracle alloy lying in two broken pieces at a human woman's boots. The admiral's voice trembled. What are you? Alara flexed her fingers slowly. Human, she said. Mostly. That was when the Dominion realized they hadn't conquered primitives. They had cornered something else. Because Alara Vance had not come to negotiate. She had come to demonstrate. And that snapped alloy? That was the polite version. Panic spreads faster than plasma through a ruptured hull. Within minutes of the alloy snapping, Dominion command networks were flooded with emergency analysis. Vraxium 9 didn't fail. It didn't fatigue. It didn't bend. And yet sensor logs confirmed it. Her tissue density exceeds predicted mammalian norms by 340%. An analyst stammered across the secure channel. She's unarmored, another replied. No exoskeleton. No mech assistance. Then what powers her? That question reached the Dominion Council within the hour. Elara didn't wait for their answer. When security forces rushed the command deck, she moved. The first Zarenth trooper lunged with an electroblade calibrated to disable armored infantry. She caught the blade in her palm. The weapon sparked uselessly against her skin. She smiled faintly. Cute. Then she headbutted the trooper hard enough to shatter its cranial plate. The rest hesitated. That hesitation cost them everything. Elara moved like a veteran who had already buried friends and decided she was done losing. She used the broken Vraxium shard as a weapon, driving it through reinforced thoraxes. She tore mounted cannons from their brackets and swung them like clubs. She fought not like a berserker, but like a tactician, disabling power relays, collapsing bulkheads, herding enemies into choke points. On Carthos Prime below, the lattice flickered. Human engineers had been waiting for that flicker. Across the colony, hidden installations powered up, rail batteries disguised as mining equipment, missile silos buried beneath agricultural domes. The Dominion had expected compliance. They had not expected preparation. Back on the fortress, the Admiral watched security feeds in horror. You are outnumbered, he shouted at Elara through a crackling intercom. Even if you destroy this station, the fleet remains. She paused long enough to wipe alien blood from her cheek. You misunderstand, she replied. This station was the leash. She slammed her fist into a primary reactor conduit. The lights dimmed. Now you're off it. At that exact moment, something appeared beyond the fortress. Not one ship. Not 10. Hundreds. Human vessels translated into real space in perfect formation, warships previously catalogued as cargo haulers and survey craft. The Dominion's long-range scans had seen them for years. They had misclassified them. Each hull bristled with weaponry hidden beneath modular plating. Old-fashioned rail guns. Nuclear lances. Kinetic kill vehicles. Weapons the Dominion considered obsolete. Weapons humanity had spent decades refining. A human fleet commander appeared on Dominion screens. An older man with a scar down one eye and the relaxed posture of someone who had already survived worse. You built your empire on fear, he said calmly. We built ours on survival. Dominion ships opened fire. Human ships didn't dodge. They absorbed the first volley on layered composite armor, then responded with a storm of kinetics that tore through Zarenth's shields. The Dominion relied on energy dominance. Humans brought mass and velocity. And something else. On the fortress, Elara reached the Admiral. He backed away, towering over her, claws extended. You are not natural, he hissed. She tilted her head. No, she agreed softly. War rarely is. He lunged. She stepped inside his reach and drove her fist through his chest. The command deck went silent. Across the fleet network, Dominion officers watched their admiral fall to a species they had deemed administratively useful. What is she made of? One whispered again. The answer began to emerge in classified human transmissions the Dominion desperately tried to decrypt. Project Hestia. Adaptive gene therapy. Gravitic muscle reinforcement. Humanity had not waited to be conquered. They had modified themselves quietly, patiently, preparing for the day someone stronger came knocking. And now that day had arrived. The galaxy's strongest ally had snapped. But that wasn't the real problem. The real problem was that the humans had been holding back. Dominion doctrine insisted on escalation. If an enemy resists, apply overwhelming force. Within hours, reinforcements translated in capital ships the size of continents, carriers that had crushed civilizations older than Earth's written history. Human commanders saw them arrive and smiled grimly, because this was the part they planned for. On Earth, decades earlier, politicians had argued about defense budgets, about ethics, about whether enhancing human soldiers crossed moral lines. Elara had sat through those hearings in silence. Then she had asked one question. What happens when something stronger decides we're convenient? No one had answered. So humanity answered for them. The Dominion supercarrier opened its primary cannon. A beam capable of splitting a moon lance toward the human fleet. At the last second, several human ships accelerated, not away, but toward the beam's origin. They detonated. Self-sacrifice. The explosions disrupted targeting arrays long enough for something else to occur. From behind Earth's moon, an object emerged. Not sleek. Not elegant. It looked industrial. Brutal. A mass driver the size of a small asteroid. Human engineers had hollowed out rock and turned it into a gun. The first shot crossed space at relativistic speed. It punched clean through the Dominion supercarrier. No shields. No warning. Just a hole. The second shot followed. Then the third. Dominion formations began to break. On the ruined fortress, Elara opened a channel to the Dominion Council itself. Her face appeared before ancient beings who had never feared extinction. You should have asked, she said evenly. Asked what? One demanded. What we're made of. She stepped aside, revealing human marines boarding crippled Dominion ships with terrifying efficiency. We're made of farmers who became soldiers. Of parents who buried children and still kept going. Of politicians who argued yes, but eventually signed the orders. Her expression hardened. You mistook patience for weakness. The Council realized, too late, that humanity had never intended to win quickly. They intended to make conquest so expensive it became suicidal. Dominion captains began issuing retreat commands. For the first time in centuries, the Empire pulled back. Not because they were destroyed, but because they were uncertain. And uncertainty is poison to tyrants. Elara watched the fleet withdraw. Victory tasted like iron. Carthos Prime was scarred. Thousands were dead. Human ships drifted in pieces across the battlefield. She felt no triumph. Only confirmation. The galaxy was dangerous. And humanity had chosen to become more dangerous still. In the weeks that followed, the Dominion did something unprecedented. They requested negotiations. Not demands. Requests. Human diplomats met them in neutral space, backed by fleets that no longer bothered hiding their weapons. Dominion envoys studied Elara Vance carefully. Scans confirmed her modifications. Reinforced musculature. Altered bone lattice. Enhanced neuroresponse. What is the limit of your enhancement? One envoy asked quietly. She considered the question. We don't know, she admitted. We've never had to test it fully. There it was. The truth that unsettled empires. Humanity didn't know its ceiling. And that frightened everyone. The treaty that followed was uneasy. Borders were recognized. Non-aggression clauses signed. Trade began. But the Dominion never forgot the sound of Raxium-9 snapping. In private councils across alien worlds, leaders spoke in hushed tones. Do not corner the humans. Do not threaten their colonies. Do not harm their children. Because they had seen what happened when humanity decided survival required evolution. On a quiet evening months later, Elara stood on a balcony overlooking Earth. Her husband joined her, a retired engineer who had once helped design the asteroid mass driver. You think they'll try again? He asked. She stared at the stars. Of course, she said softly. Empires always do. He slipped his hand into hers. And us? She smirked faintly. We'll be ready. In orbit, human shipyards worked without pause. Not frantically. Not fearfully. Steadily. Because that was the secret the Dominion had finally understood. Humans weren't made of miracle alloys. They weren't invincible. They bled. They aged. They broke. But when something stronger snapped their cage into place, they snapped back harder. And somewhere in Dominion space, in a quiet chamber where broken Vraxium 9 fragments were studied endlessly, a single line was added to military doctrine. Never underestimate humanity. Because the strongest alloy in the galaxy wasn't metal. It was resolve. And that, once forged, does not break.